I'm not Batman, but what helmet should Batman wear? Hey folks, Matt Easton here, Schola Gladiatoria of course. Now, recently I did a video talking about open face helmets, of which I'm a big fan, and so was history in general. All the way from ancient history, Greeks and Romans, all the way through the Viking era, early medieval period, all the way through to the medieval period and to the Renaissance, with gunpowder and everything else, and through to the modern day, World War I, World War II, all the 19th century. Open face helmets are the bomb, so to speak. So obviously helmets fulfill many functions other than simply just for you to be shot at or have swords or poleaxes or whatever swung at you at. It's to protect you from general projectiles. Also, just protect you from banging your head or shrapnel, things falling off walls, all that kind of stuff. In World War I, they came to war without helmets, got lots of head injuries, not from bullets mostly, mostly from shrapnel, falling earth, things falling on them in trenches and all this kind of stuff, bits of wood. And they started wearing tin hats of various sorts. But the fact is that the helmets were primarily there to protect the tops of their heads from stuff. Now, I made a video talking about open face helmets and about how there are certain points which mean that open face helmets have been throughout history the most predominant and most popular types of helmets for most types of soldiers, if not all of them. The most important of those that I consider are better sight and hearing, very important, so senses essentially, and being able to talk. But perhaps above all of those things, I think sight's very important, especially once you're dealing with shooting weapons, but perhaps above all of those things, breathing. And anybody who's never, who's looked at pictures of knights and stuff but hasn't actually worn a knight's helmet, once you start to put things on like this bever, okay, which I will attempt to put on while also talking, you will notice that you can't hear me so well now. Okay, I can't find the hole, so to speak. You can't hear me so well. And additionally, I now have something in front of my mouth. For that reason, let's have a look at this. I'm looking slightly like Darth Vader, which I quite like instantly. Obviously, I can stick my face above here, but you don't want to do that all the time. This is here to protect the lower half of my face when I am wearing this type of helmet, which is known as a sallet. Now you'll notice that when I close the visor, that overlaps, and that's now a fully protective thing. Usually the chin strap will be on underneath my chin incidentally, but when I open this, I can now see a lot better. And when where's the clip? It's around this side, isn't it? It's not easy to find. There we go. When I lower that down, I can now breathe better. So I've got this goes up, this goes down. Oh, I'm like a turtle, hiding away from all kinds of threats. But a lot of the time I'd actually be doing this so that I can see and breathe. And I'll tell you, when you're wearing full harness, it's hot. It's not that heavy, actually, if it's well made, and especially if it's hardened carbon steel, then it's relatively thin and relatively light and spread out across your body. But the heat and the general change to your movement patterns mean that you do get out of breath, especially once you start fighting. So once you start doing any kind of combat, it can be quite difficult to breathe, and I can imagine in a lot of situations, and we see this in medieval art, people opened up their helmets, even when they had closed helmets. Obviously you've got things like visors, things like armets, certain types of late great helm, close helmets, bassinets and so on. They'd open up the visors in close combat simply so they could see and breathe better. So indeed, when they're advancing into combat, they might be like this, and as soon as they get into combat they might be doing this kind of thing. And we know from period art that oftentimes people just took this entire bever off. Now I'm going to leave on for a second for a very specific reason. Now I'm aware that you're partially watching this video because you want to know about Batman, so I'm going to stop talking about medieval armour now, but I'm going to use it as a reference point because I have always thought that when we're looking at fantasy, science fiction, anything fictional, we should refer to and draw upon history because that's tried and tested stuff from the past that people actually did for real world reasons. So if we're trying to build a convincing reality that people are going to buy into and suspend disbelief, then there has to be, we have to obey certain things, the laws of physics essentially of that universe. Okay, now Batman exists in kind of an alternate reality of our world, doesn't he? So the gravity works the same way. I was going to say there's no magic, but there kind of is, I suppose, but we won't go into that. But basically, he is a very rich person who invests in the latest technology, and more importantly than that, technology which is beyond what you or I have available to us. Okay, and fair, you know, things beyond which our militaries have available to them as well. So, let's look at Batman's mask or helmet. So I've just taken all that off so you can hear me a bit better, and so I can hear myself a bit better as well. So now, Batman's helmet or mask. Well, there are a few different iterations to this, obviously, aren't there? Originally, Batman's mask was, I think, supposed to disguise his identity and instill fear in the enemy and all of these sorts of things, but it was basically a mask. So let's push that aside. In more recent versions of Batman, there have been versions of the helmet which are clearly supposed to be protective. They're supposed to be knife proof, to some degree punch proof. The pointy bits, the ears, I suppose at some point can kind of perhaps be used as a weapon if they're made in the right way. And additionally, they're supposed to be bulletproof and even kind of Superman proof in some versions of the story. Now, there are two fundamental problems. Now, before I go on, I just want to give credit to Shad. So Shad did a response, Shadiversity channel, linked below to the video, did a response to me talking about open helmets. My open helmets video wasn't intended to be a response to Shad, but I was talking about open helmets and I did refer to Batman, and he had been talking about Batman as well. So I'm very appreciative of it, of the shout out and the link talking about my video, and so returning the favour, I guess, although obviously he's got a much bigger channel than me, but returning the favour in the best way I can, and that's kind of a response. So let's talk about what we think. If Batman is going for something, let's say, you know, a bulletproof, stab-proof, baseball bat-proof helmet setup, where he's going to be shot at and he wants to be protected from the usual, not Superman level, but the usual level of risks that Batman is likely to come under, what are the main problems with his helmet? Okay, so the first one is the lower half of the face. Okay, now we talked about other superheroes. I talked about in my previous video other superheroes that have a lower half of the face which is exposed. Off the top of my head, there are people like Wolverine, or it doesn't really apply to him because of his skeleton. Robocop, it doesn't really apply to him because of his skeleton. There's Captain America. Is his helmet protective? I think it's supposed to be, yes, so Captain America applies. Captain Marvel sometimes wears a helmet. So there are, and Judge Dredd, definitely a helmet that leaves the lower half of the face exposed. So there are definitely other comic book / fantasy sci-fi characters who have the lower halves of their face exposed. And I suppose by looking at historical examples of open-faced helmets, I was trying to give potential reasons for that, what it might be for breathing, talking, whatever, okay? However, in Batman's case, he needs to have a protected face if he's going to have people shooting at him, because quite clearly, if someone who's shooting at his chest armour, as Shad pointed out, if someone's shooting at his chest armour and bam, 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 or it was automatic fire, which, let's face it, if you're using something like an AK or something, has a tendency, if you're on full auto, to ride up slightly anyway, then indeed, whether deliberately or accidentally, Batman could catch one full in the mouth, so to speak. And that's really, really bad and stupid, because clearly, if he's invested all of this time and money in making himself bulletproof down here, bulletproof up here, bulletproof here, but this is just got nothing at all, well, that's pretty dumb, isn't it? Now, what's the solution to that? Well, assuming that Batman has other reasons for having his face exposed down here, talking, breathing, this kind of stuff, then we need a type of helmet where he can, like a visor, he can reveal that part of his face or cover it up. Now, I would say that Batman's sort of high-tech armour, akin to Marvel's Iron Man in some ways, many ways in fact, Iron Man has a completely covered face, okay? But we know that Batman, for some reason, doesn't want to do that. So within the universe that Batman exists in, the DC world, what we'd need to do is explain how Batman protects his face when he's under fire, but then exposes his face again for whatever reasons. Now, wonderfully, it just so happens that my helmet, which coincidentally is quite dark, Batman-ish, has this bever, as we saw before. And I think that is the answer to Batman's problems. Now, it would need to be more exaggerated than this, but there are historical examples which are more exaggerated than this, and actually, rather than just having one articulated plate here, actually have a series of articulations, and some of them articulate from being something that sits just under the chin, so kind of neck defense essentially, and you can pull the entire thing up to connect with the brow up here, and you actually look through the bever, so it's like an upside down visor, if you will. Now, I think this would be a brilliant solution to Batman, and you could incorporate it into it breathing apparatus, okay? And Shad touched on this in his video as well, and I completely agree, that having breathing apparatus, hell, that would be useful. It would mean you can go into water. It would mean if someone lets off tear gas or poison gas of any kind, that thing can shoot up via a sensor, okay? If someone starts shooting at you, obviously it'll shoot up. So I think it absolutely makes sense for Batman's armor, particularly his helmet and the gorget, if we call it that, to have a sensor activated where it comes up, closes the lower half of the helmet, wouldn't need to change what's above, and it can have breathing apparatus and underwater apparatus built into it, because that's Batman. We can just say, yeah, that's Batman. He can afford that stuff, okay? So that's the first thing. Now, the second thing, which I think, I won't say is a bigger problem, but I'll explain why I debated that internally in my brain in a second. It's the eyes, okay? The eyes of Batman. Now, clearly wearing some black makeup around the eyes and having great big holes in your helmet is a bad idea, okay? Eyes are incredibly sensitive. Not only are they sensitive to little bits of dust getting in them from an explosion, bits of shrapnel, obviously being shot or stabbed through the hull, but things flying through the air but principally also gas and fumes and smoke and stuff. Imagine Batman has to rush into a burning building. He's going to be like, oh, I've got all of this bulletproof armor, but oh man, that's stinging my eyes and I can't see. And bam, someone hits him in the chin with a baseball bat. Kind of stupid. Okay, so the eyes have to be protected. And I would argue that there's no good reason why his eyes shouldn't be protected with some type of lenses the whole time that are obviously bulletproof, that are obviously smoke-proof and poison gas-proof. So definitely, and funnily enough, when we look at medieval helmets like this used in modern sport, often people fit a mesh on the inside here. It's not historical at all, but there is a risk of a blade or a broken fragment, splinter from a lance, and various other things entering these eye slits. So medieval people made that eye slit as narrow as they could while still being able to see out of it, but they didn't fill it with any mesh or glass or perspex or anything like that, of course. But in the modern world, we can do. There are some downsides to this. And one of the reasons that you don't want to do that is they can steam up. But what I would do is I would refer my honourable viewers to the modern world. And if we look at modern militaries, whether it's military and police as well, I should add, whether it's people doing riot control or whether it's people out in parts of the world doing military operations, very often people wear goggles of some kind. Can just be sunglasses, can be ballistic glasses, can be goggles, can be a perspex thing that comes down from the helmet in police purposes. So protecting the eyes, very, very important. Now, Batman, if you did want to have open eyes for some reason, then absolutely, what we talked about, the bever springing up from the neck defense, you could have the same thing. You could have little electric windows, as it were, inside your eyes. So there we go. Obviously, there are other things you could do with a helmet. It can have various sensors and Iron Man type things in it if you want. That's for another channel probably. I was going to say another video, but not really for my channel. But I would say from an armour point of view, looking at historical and present day armour and everything in between the past and the present, I would say absolutely Batman needs a concertina ring closing gorget or bever, okay, to protect his lower half of his face when it's required. And additionally, I would say that his mask needs permanently fixed lenses which can have vision enhancing things and that kind of stuff in. Or at least, and we have seen this in some of the Batman franchises, some kind of things that come down that enable particular types of vision. And you know, it's science fiction technology, so we can just say that that's possible and doesn't have any downsides. What do you think? Do you agree with me? Do you agree this would look really badass? That famous scene where we see Robert Pattinson being shot with gunfire from everyone and just soaking it up and coming in and beating the living daylights out of them with his fists and grabbing their guns and this kind of stuff looks great. But I think if that had started happening and something had gone and closed like a bever, the bottom half of his mask, that everyone would have been like, whoa, okay, now he's believably bulletproof. Okay, it would have made the whole suit more formidable, more impressive, and more intimidating and scary as well. You could even have some kind of design on there, on the thing that pops up, or little lights or something to light up the area, or who knows. But I think it would have looked really badass. So there we go. Matt Easton's view on costume design in the DC universe. I hope this has been interesting. Share your views and opinions below. Also check out, if you haven't seen Chad's video, link below there. Thanks Chad to responding and posting that video. I enjoyed it a lot and it gave me the impetus to make this one as well. Thanks for watching. I hope I'll see you again soon. Take care folks. Thanks for watching. We've got extra videos on Patreon. Please give our Facebook a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Cheers folks.